Hello, good morning. I just thought I would come on here and talk to you about my book. Thank you, Mrs.G. A few of you may have seen the clip that I posted, just a little bit introduction of the book. But now I just thought I would just tell you how I came to write this book and perhaps go through a few chapters that are my favorites. Um, I, started writing this book about a year. It took me about a year, about 9 months really, to write this whole book, and it came about really by a few things I'd seen on social media, when I saw how Africans commented on a few things, especially from my own country, Zimbabwe, when a picture of Mr. Ian Smith was posted on Facebook. And there were a lot of people who seemingly missed him. And I was worried about that because I felt um, there was a problem with the fact that people had not fully grasped the effects of colonization and how it damaged us as Africans. It felt a little bit like the children of Israel who wanted to go back to Egypt, because when your mind has been colonized, um, your choices have been made before you even make them, and you think you're making the choices, but really these choices were ingrained into you. You were conditioned to make those choices. So and I started to try to find out how, we were so damaged that so many years after independence, we still were pandering to the people that oppressed us. So I stopped working because this is something I'm passionate about. For a while, thank God, I was able to sit down and write this book and focus on it for 9 months. It was like going to a job every day. And each time I felt very compelled to sort of pour out what I felt about what we go through as Africans and how we are blinded as to the pain that we're going through. We're very good at numbing our pain and conditioning ourselves to reach for less than what we are. So it is something that I really wanted to write about, and I had to take this journey myself in order to take you on it as well. And therefore, I embarked on writing this book without any knowledge of how it was going to go, and I intentionally did not want this book to be professionally edited because I did not want it to lose the homegrownness of it. So I wanted to be so as original as possible. So my son actually designed the book cover, and this cover has got what we call Duri in Africa, in Zimbabwe, and it is a pestle. What is it? It is for pounding. It is for pounding, nuts and grain, and and it's very important. It's like the grinding. It's not the grinding mill, but it's sort of something that uh, half grinds the grains. It's a very special, a very important tool in Zimbabwe. So I wanted it to sort of signify Africa and our pride in the fact that we are the most organic people you can ever think of, and we eat organic. So and as well, my book is just as organic because the editing was done by my family. My boys actually did the editing. I wanted to be as very much as original as possible. I did not want it to be, if if I was saying English is not my language, and I went to get professionals to actually, bring out that, the best of the English, that probably would have been negating what the whole thing was about. In this book, I mentioned my parents who were born and raised in colonization. And I also, I really thought um, it was just my generation I was writing to, but I was amazed at how the response I got from very young people in Ireland and in England who really connected to what I was saying about how they felt. And I was so pleased to know that, um, God has put this in my heart, and it was not just for my generation. It was, for young people, 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds, and, writing back to me and, inboxing me and say, they actually do. They have African immigrant parents, and they find themselves in situations where their parents are being laughed at and seen as, you know, um, uneducated just because they speak English differently. And even themselves, they found themselves in situations where, when they're surrounded by a class of white people, they find that they have to act a certain way. They feel compelled to act a certain way. And it was amazing that, um, 30 years after, you know, we still have the same problem. And what is painful about the African story is that, most people don't realize how colonized they are. Um, Most people will still salute, a white person over a black person. Most people would still choose to do business with a white person rather than a black person. So, colonization is continuing in Africa. It is continuing because we have internalized our oppression. Um, and we actually, and those, in leadership have also internalized, they've used the same tools that we are oppressed with to oppress the wrong. All these are, collateral effects of colonization. And when we start to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, those questions, those hard questions, and say, why do I feel that I'm less than a white person? Is this justified, or is it just in my head? And it is in your head, because so many times you will see, and a lot of people have submitted voluntarily to white people, just because of their skin color. So a lot of oppression goes on. Of course, it's still there. Racism is still there. But we also have to rise and realize that, we are actually a very, very intelligent nation. I say nation because Africa is one nation. You know yourself that when you meet any African, you will feel a lot more comfortable talking to an African than you would any other person. So yes, we are, one people, and therefore we should rise up and be proud of who we are. My father was born in 1914 and he died in 1979, in Zimbabwe. And he died without his freedom, really. And images of him still come to me when he's speaking, when he was speaking to white people, how he would bow down and really try and behave himself. Um, and it breaks my heart. That is part of why I wrote this book. I thought to myself, I will not allow another generation, my children and my grandchildren, to keep bowing down. That's my motivation for this book. And if it can help any other person who feels the same, uh, it will be great. But I know, there's a lot of people who are in this position. You should ask yourself, whenever you are talking to a white person, ask yourself, are you at ease? Are you free to be yourself? Are you adjusting to please that person? Or are you being yourself and trying to make them understand you as a person? Um, we have always tried to be understood, so we have moved to other people's territories. This explains why, after independence, so many people have gone to Europe and the West. It's because our minds are still colonized. So we were looking for what we are used to serving. We were looking for the race that we're used to serving. So we are comfortable. And when we come here, directors and people in top position back home will come and just do any job because they're more comfortable there. Because your mind does not want you to be in a comfort zone. It wants you to stay where it's comfortable. It doesn't want you to have to go outside of what you're used to. So sometimes we have to force our minds to actually, think outside the box. Think outside and say, how would it be if I was the one in charge, rather than looking for somebody to be in charge of your life? Because this all happens in the subconscious, and we have to be able to look at ourselves and say, why am I submissive, to the white race? Why do I still behave as if I need their approval? Ask yourself questions when you're talking to somebody. Ask yourself questions, sort of rate yourself when you're talking to a black person, when you're talking to a white person. Are you the same person? And if you're not, then it's time for you to have a look and see. And it's not something that you can be blamed for, because this was a conditioning. This was something that we were subdued in so many ways, and a lot of things were done to make us think that way, and therefore it is not our fault. But if we stay there, then it becomes our fault. So we have to rise up above where we were left, where we were subdued, where we were, seen as less than human. Did you know that it was acceptable that an African was less intelligent? Of course, you know that, I'm sure you do. And that we are actually three-fifths of a human being. So whichever way, every law that was made, was obviously made around the fact that we're not 100% human. We cannot continue to stay that way. We cannot continue to be there. We are a very powerful nation. All over the place, there are buildings of that were built by kings and queens of Africa before colonization came. And the Great Zimbabwe, for example, they still cannot understand how it was built, because there was a lot of intelligence that went into it. That's why they thought it was aliens who built it, um, or and they thought, oh, some people from the east must have built it, because they had to say something that went along with the narrative that a black person is less than human, his intelligence is not 100%.